All right, guys, welcome to Unit 2 for CTIS-22 Digital Forensics, Thinking Like a Digital Investigator. I haven't shared my screen yet, don't worry. I'm about to start the PowerPoint slides, but let's get into it. It's going to be about 55 slides. So just bear with me. We'll talk about it. We'll go through it. This is the last week of just looking at slides and not working on any like programs or anything great. That's literally next week. So just we're getting there. I'm just sharing my screen. You're gonna like my background, and if you're curious why that says renders, I do 3D printing. That's where I just have all my rendered stuff. So let me start the slideshow here, and I will start talking about it. I hope you guys are having a good day so far. It's my Saturday, and I'm doing this. So here we are. Like I said, thinking like a digital investigator. I will probably go through and capitalize the D and the I, but those slides are there for you to have, and let's get into it, right? So here's what we're going to cover. We'll explore the mindset and methodology used by digital investigators. It's like a digital detective, right? Same deal. Digital gumshoe, if you want to call yourself that. If you've never heard the term gumshoe, it's a old reference into what they call investigators, private investigators, PIs, stuff like that. Topics include, we're covering the investigative mindset, digital evidence sources, investigation methodology. That's actually, it has a longer title in it, but you'll see what I mean when I get there. I think it's digital evidence investigation methodology is what it's called, but I shorthanded it for this reason. Chain of custody, evidence handling procedures, and digital forensic laboratories or digital forensic just labs. Thankfully, the long form of it out. These concepts form the foundation of all digital investigations. Keep that in mind. So this is the bread and butter of like the terminology of thinking like a digital investigator. It's all going to be in your, up here in little caboodle. So let's get to it. So the investigator mindset. A digital investigator must think differently than a typical IT professional. Well, what do you mean? So I know some of you have hands-on working in IT, some of you have been lab managers, and we always have to think of how do we fix it, right? It's a little different in this regard. You can't really fix in the sense of fix it, like make it run again. It's more of you gotta think where things should be hidden. You have to avoid changing anything you find. It has to be kept in the same state that you found it in. You have to take meticulous notes and document everything you find and maintain the objectivity of you're doing, as in how does the accounting information I'm looking for, or I just found apply in the case of XYZ that I'm following. I'm not going to use any specific things and legal cases. I'm not going to really mention people's names. I'm just going to talk about them in general. Okay, so I mentioned like if there was a murder, what would we left behind digitally? That's something I had you guys look into. There's also I think a comparison for extra credit in this thing from a 90s murder case. I don't name it. I just touch on it. Like there's 90s murder case. There was this and this compared to how I would be like today. So just think about that. Follow legal procedures. What are the definitive legal procedures for it? What are the guidelines? Things like that. The goal is not to just find information. It's one thing to find it, right? But to produce evidence that can stand up in court. Can it stand up on its own? So is this accounting information that I found again for the XYZ case I'm working on? Can this stand in court and be used as evidence? It's something you have to keep in mind when working with this kind of stuff, okay? So you produce a lot of something called artifacts, which I will get into. And artifacts are just bits of information that you reference can be used as evidence to support the claim or theories you're working with. I know it can get a little dry and sounds a little complex, but you will kind of see it as we go in through this. And by the way, this is stuff I made for you guys. This is stuff from the book because the book doesn't really kind of cover this, in my opinion, that well. So I kind of like to go out of it and just make things that will hopefully make some more sense. So let's dive in. So, like I said, what is the investigative mindset? Um, an investigative mindset refers to a structured and systematic way of gathering, evaluating, and interpreting information during an investigation. What does that mean? Well, use critical thinking. So that's why you guys have to take a lot of math so you can learn how to problem solve and think on the fly. There's a million ways to do things, right? But if one way you know how to do it doesn't work, try this way, try that way, blah, 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 blah. That's part of critical thinking. Following a systematic investigation process, remain objective and unbiased. You can't have your emotions attached to this kind of work. You have to keep it separate and you have to really be I guess black and white would be the word, but I say logical and gray because sometimes you have to keep the world gray for it to make sense. And what I mean by that, you have to look at it from every angle, every way you can think of extrapolating something or figuring something out. So evaluating evidence in the context of the overall case is the main point. Rather than simply collecting data, investigators must interpret digital artifacts, remember I mentioned artifacts prior to this a slide ago, and determine what they mean with the broader investigation. That's why I was like, how does it tie in? Digital forensics is not just technical work, guys. Investigators must interpret information, not just extract it. Evidence must be assessed, within the context or scheme of the investigation, not in isolation. Not like, oh, this piece was with this. Well, how does this piece tie into all of this? And that could be like, air quotes, the smoking gun, right? You've heard of that phrase? Or it could be like the major clue that helps tie something else together from something else. That's how you have to look at this stuff, kind of. Or piece it together, rather, to make it work. If it works. If it doesn't, throw it out in the sense of it's not going to apply. Did my slide change? Yes, it did. Sorry. Let me go back one. Yeah, it looks similar. That's my fault. Why the investigation mindset matters. Digital evidence is now involved in most modern investigations, including cybercrime investigations. Hear about data breaches all the time, right? It's really where it's going to apply a lot. Ransomware, corporate investigations, you don't hear about much, but it's part of that too. Fraud cases are now mostly digital. It's a digital age, right? No one has giant cabinet stuff with like accounting information that's all online or in the cloud. Insider threats, which you've heard me mention, like hypothetically, an insider threat, the best way I can describe it is, let's say you and this person named Bob are up for promotion. It's in between one of you. Let's say you get it. Cool, you got the new position. Bob did it, and Bob felt like it was owed to them. Bob is angry. Bob is resentful. Bob will be either snippy or upset, crabby, however you want to look at it, but they're the kind of person that could qualify as insider threat because, like, you know what? I'm only causing information about the company. That's an insider threat because he's gonna do it or does it. Law enforcement investigations, obviously the big one. That's where a lot of this really comes into play, and obviously corporate ones. Cybercrime, it goes hand in hand with law enforcement in reality, but and corporate because they all kind of got to tango together or work together, right? So, because digital evidence can appear in many forms, investigators will be able to identify potential evidence sources. So, is it hidden in a picture, hidden in a text file? Is it deleted? Can you recover it? Things like that. You will get into that in Unit 3. You're going to do a lot of it. Don't worry. Evaluate reliability of artifacts. Interpret relationship between pieces of evidence. Without an investigative mindset, forensic work becomes simple data collection rather than meaningful investigation. So tools can extract data. Investigators will determine what the data means. Like I said, does it make sense? Is this account used for something? Yada, yada, yada. Where they're looking up how to hypothetically how can I say this? Hypothetically, say it's a murder, right? This person murdered somebody they knew, whatever. They were Googling how deep you have to bury bodies so dogs can't find it, kind of deal. And then it per se happened. It's just an example. So if you find out that, can that be tied into the murder? You found it on this computer or laptop, phone, whatever. Yes or no. Log it. And you log it, and you categorize it and go from there. Apologies if I burp. I don't mean to. I had something spicier than what I planned to have, but as well, I was confused with my slides. But it's okay, my fault. So the inconsistent mindset continued. Digital forensics is more than a tool. Many students assume digital forensics is primarily about tools such as autopsy, which you'll play with next, FTK, you'll play with next. In case you will not, sadly, because we don't have a license for it. It's way too expensive. Wireshark, I don't have you do much networking stuff because I don't. This is more of hands-on tools with cases and artifacts that I have from bigger cases. Like there's Outlook files and stuff you look at from a system. Eventually, you do a RAM capture on your own machine. You can dig through it, things like that. However, tools only present artifacts and data. Investigators must determine whether artifacts are relevant, whether artifacts are reliable, and how artifacts relate to the other evidence. The investigator mindset focuses on implementing the story behind the data. So what can it tell you? Like I said, let's keep going back to an account because sadly talking about money kind of makes it a little easier. So what can they tell us about this account number? It's a link to a Swiss bank account where they transferred money or siphoned money off XYZ, things like that. This is the important concept for students. Tools do not solve cases, investigators do. You got to put it all together and have it make sense. You hear me harp on that, guys. I'm sorry. So we're still in the investigative mindset, okay? The attribution, the ultimate goal. One of the most important goals of an investigator is attribution. Attribution means linking digital activity to a person or event. For example, who used the computer? Who accessed the files? Who transferred the data? When did the activity occur? These are the things you have to ask when you look at these artifacts that you collect through this file, through the programs you're using or the methods you went through. So evidence rarely proves attribution by itself. Investigators must combine multiple pieces of evidence to build a narrative. It's got to have all the facts of the case, right? Who, when, where, what, why. That kind of deal. This is where investigative reasoning becomes critical. Artifacts alone rarely prove guilt. You have to associate it with, like I said, going back to mentioning about digging how deep did they buy a shovel? That shows intent, with that Google search or whatever they search through, DuckDuckGo or what have you. Just aesthetical. That can be tied with it, things like that. So let's go. So how you develop the investigative mindset. Developing investigative thinking requires practice. Yes, it is. Important skills include critical thinking, problem solving, evidence evaluation, and analytical reasoning. Investigators must also continually improve their skills because technology constantly evolves. New digital artifacts emerge. Investigation techniques change over time. The investigative mindset is therefore a continuous learning process rather than a single skill. The best way I can show you for an example of technology constantly evolves. Let me Google something and get out of context for a second. It's okay, it's in my Google. And that's fine. So let me go to images. Don't worry, it's nothing bad. I think it was this phone. I'm just mentioning an ancient phone. So this phone, I'm going to date myself by saying this. Growing up, was considered unbreakable. The running joke was you drop it on the floor, it breaks the floor. The phone's fine. Yeah, these phones are super durable. Yes, they're over 20 years old. But they're hard to track nowadays. Why? Because all the infrastructure for, this kind of phone now doesn't really exist. It's still around, but not as much. So tracking it's pretty hard when you compare it to, and I'm not picking on anyone, okay? I'm just using, I don't know what the newest one is right now for iPhones or whatever. Just pull a picture of one. Just do a 17. Sorry, guys, I'm just like thinking. Is that what they look like? I don't know. I'm not an Apple guy. I'm an Android guy. But compared to tracking something like this now, this is modern, right? Sorry. Don't worry about that. I'm just showing you the picture of it. So compared to tracking something like this, think about it. What would be easier? Tracking the old Nokia phone that barely has infrastructure around and people barely know how to work on with those kind of tools to find the signal for or intercept text messages or calls with it versus this, which now even uses an electronic digital or a virtual SIM card versus the old ones used physical SIM chips. So just think about that. That's what I'm referring to. And that's what they refer to with technology advancing. So moving on. It's just an example I had in my head rolling around. I've been kind of inserting for this. So it changes, right? Technology is changing all the time. So, sorry guys, I wonder if I'm skipping things. Yeah, we're good. My brain goes around. So, what is digital evidence? Let's shift gears here. Digital evidence refers to information stored or transmitted in electronic form, email, searches, chat logs, things like that, that can be used in an investigation or court proceeding. Examples: computer files, right? All your computer files are digital. Last time I checked. Emails and messages, digital. Photos and video, YouTube, it's digital, right? Instagram's digital, TikTok's digital. Network activity logs. I'm just showing you the built-in Windows logs, okay? Don't freak out at me. But that's a log, right? I forgot my system. This is a log. If it ever decides to load, I'm not going to look dumb for 3 seconds. My point is this: the event viewer is a log of your system. There you go. I don't know what it's warning me about. I'm not going to worry about it. But if you want to ever make this bigger, so that's all the stuff I've been doing. Why is my hair? Oh, Molvon. I haven't even used Molvon in months. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Not the end of the world. But that's a log, right? They can examine that. So that's kind of related, or is related. It's a file. Data stored on mobile devices. You all have cell phones, right? There's pictures on there. There's videos recorded. There's logins to a bunch of different websites, applications, you name it, it's there. Digital evidence now plays a role in nearly all criminal and civil investigations, not just cybercrime cases. I mean, the world's digital, right, guys? Having one of these, I'm bringing up my cell phone here. That's my wife. Don't worry about it. Is like having a computer in your pocket because that's what it really is. I mean, you can code on the damn phones now, right? You can do anything. You can buy anything instantly and whatnot, search anything. My point is, it's a computer. It's in your pocket. You can. It's a piece of evidence if you Googled on it or searched rather. Moving on. So types of digital evidence continued. Common categories of digital evidence include. Give me 1 second. I think I'm going to be interrupted. Or not. We're good. Like I was saying, common categories of digital evidence include documents and files, Word documents, spreadsheets, PDFs, Outlook PST files, JPEG images, PNG images. What's another one? MP3 files for music or WAV files for sound. Uh, .text documents. Anything ends in dot something, it's a computer file, right? Like I said, emails and electronic communications, like chat logs, instant messaging, Discord messages, social media posts and messages, multimedia files such as images, I just mentioned that above, video, audio recordings, which I mentioned above. Sorry, just kind of reiterating it. Web browsing history, yeah, that's pretty common in murder cases. They're searching web history a lot to see what they were looking for. I know in some cases, I don't remember the name of the case off the top of my head, but there was a lady that kept going, how hot fire has to get for a body to decompose and things like that. Database records are pretty common to be searched now. Transaction logs, like let's say there's a fugitive, right? And they're running, which here. Sorry, they're running from the U.S. government or whatever, and they're trying to flee the country. And they buy an airline ticket. Would it be recorded? Where would it be recorded? Purchase with a credit card in the airline system now, so that's a log in the database. When they board, things like that. So that would be an electronic record as well. Just keep that in mind. Each type of evidence can reveal important information such as user activity, communication patterns, intent or motive, timeline of events. So if they bought like the airline ticket at 8 p.m. the day before, and let's say they commit the murder or were running away at the next morning at 8 a.m., could that show intent of them trying to flee? Yes, because the flight was scheduled at like 10 a.m. the next day or whatever, and they caught them at 8 a.m. at the airport. It's the hypothetical. I don't know if that happened, but just trying to put you in the mind like, oh, okay, I kind of get it. Just an example I think about on the fly as well. So let's move on to the next page. We're still talking about sources. We're talking about sources now of digital evidence. So, investigators must understand where digital evidence might exist. Common sources include recent cell phones, which is mobile devices. Tablets are another one. I keep forgetting those exist, and so does half the world. Desktop and laptop computers, everybody has one. Chromebooks, same deal. Cloud storage services, it's up in the cloud. Doesn't mean it's not on a computer up there. It's up there. Surveillance systems, security camera, uh, Internet of Things, your Fire Stick, your Alexa, your Siri docs, anything you communicate with and work with in that capacity at home. Your anything smart at home too, like a smart doorbell, smart camera, um, a smart AC thermos, things that they're all connected to the Wi-Fi, right? They all have a log of what you're doing. You know, that's hypothetical, okay? Someone breaks into a house and the AC triggered at that time or whatever. There'll be a log of it because it sense motion, so they can verify that if that person's caught based on the time this went off, at the time they were in the house, things like that. Internet logs and ISP records, those are very common. Or sorry, network logs, not internet logs. Network logs and ISP records are very common. ISP records get subpoenaed all the time in cases. I'm being adamant because one of the best examples, and this is actually going back even further when ISPs were, I mean, this is probably back in the 80s. I know, so you heard of Pablo Escobar. Give me a second. What do I have to mean with that? Um, Hold on. What I'm trying to say is they used an ISP in Colombia to pretty much find out who he was calling. See if that's this here. I don't have it. Should have done this a little bit before, but if you're curious, it's from watching Narcos what it happened. If you're curious about it, look up Central Spike and Escobar. Again, I deal with more cloak and dagger stuff. Um, actually, here's a link if you're curious about it. I will copy this link. So I will add it in here. It's in the notes section of this area. Actually, let me edit this slide. Give me a second. Let me pause it and I'll put it in there. All right, there you go. I inserted the link that leads you to a Wired article about CentraSpike. That's how they tracked them. It's just, if you're curious about it, read it. It's just, again, cloak and dagger stuff the CIA did in the 80s, technically mid-80s, to fight drugs in Colombia. It's more of the terms of look at it from the digital investigator point of view, and you'll see what I mean. So let's move on. So, growth of digital evidence. Modern investigations generate enormous volumes of digital data. Evidence may exist on personal devices, business systems, cloud platforms, online services. Because of this growth, investigators must be able to identify relevant evidence, filter large volumes of data, focus artifacts, and support the investigation. So I can guarantee you, this right here is where AI has been used the most, I think, with most of the new software that's out. They kind of tied it because let's face it, you're not looking at a terabyte anymore. You're looking at petabytes, huge, and I mean huge amounts of data to sift through if it's like a legal case involving tax fraud. And they have stuff scattered all over the world. You have to search through servers and mountains and mountains. I'm like looking up because I'm imagining this never-ending like pile of those digital paperwork you're going to go through. So how do you become more efficient? This is where AI, in my opinion, would come into play and help you because they identify things from, tax room 4 that was involved in fraudulent activity, anything referencing tax room 4, and let's say they have their stuff hidden in the Cayman Islands. So making any references to Cayman Islands, they transfer through the Panama through a digital wire. or how did it work, things like that. So that, imagine having to do that by hand. No, that would take for. I mean, you're doing it by hand, but doing it manually by hand is what I mean. With AI helping you, it can help you make a pattern quicker. So that's where it's being kind of taken into. So remember, you got to think of where could digital evidence exist. That's where most of this comes into play as well. So where would it be? Servers, email logs, email chains, messages on Facebook or whatever people use now, TikTok, WeChat, what's the other one? The Russian one, Telegram, WhatsApp. All these things that it produces mounds and mounds of data, right? So just remember, where could it exist? So, digital evidence often includes multimedia artifacts such as audio recordings, video footage, digital photographs, surveillance camera footage. Yeah, that's common too. You've seen that. It's been happening since there were like video cameras or surveillance cameras when tape ones appeared. That was a little more complex back in the day because it involved a bunch of different machines that copy a tape. Now it's just like on a hard drive, right? These forms of evidence are increasingly used in investigations involving violent crime, fraud, identity theft, cybercrime, and corporate investigations. Again, where could digital evidence exist in any one of these? Think about it. So let's talk about scientific foundations of digital forensics. So NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, developed standards for digital forensic analysis. That's why there's a specific way to do all this. That's why you have to log everything, right? Testing methods for forensic tools. Because imagine if every, like, let's say, police department, federal agency did their digital investigations all differently, how much confusion will that be? One place does it this way, this place does it that way, the other place does it this way. That's like having a person who only likes pepperoni pizza, but every pizza they pick has something on it other than pepperoni they don't like. So we make it all standardized and streamlined. It makes sense because everyone follows the same kind of format, so you can all share information easier. So reference data sets for investigations, best practices for evidence preservation, and their efforts help ensure that digital evidence is reliable, repeatable, and scientifically valid. That's what happened when NIST stepped in and standardized all this stuff. So it must follow digital forensic investigations must follow and follow, sorry, standardized procedures. Standards help ensure the following: evidence integrity, accuracy of analysis, reliable forensic tools, and consistent investigation practices. Without standards, digital evidence could be challenged or rejected in court. So, digital evidence presents unique challenges compared to traditional evidence. Digital data can be easily modified or deleted, but there's programs to recover deleted files. We will use some, don't worry. It's where you scan a USB drive and scan it to see what was erased or hidden and see what you can find. Don't worry, you don't really need to share much from what you find. You write about it. It exists across multiple jurisdictions. That can get very hairy very fast. And I just got an email. Don't worry about the ding. Be hidden or encrypted. You will run into that too in some of the labs. Some of the stuff is hidden, and I think a file or two I make is encrypted. Don't ask me why. Exists in extremely large quantities. That's the whole point of having to sift through a bunch of data and metadata, how you go through it without ripping your hair out. God, give me a second, guys. Let me pause this for a second. I'll be back. I apologize, guys. That was my fault for leaving Mercedes Outlook open because I'm reading your emails on the weekend when I have some time. And back in news in a second. If you want to take a break right now, it's fine. You can hear me just flap my beak. I will work on grading all of your assignments Monday through Wednesday this week, so just sit tight. I will get through it. I got through most of the stuff that was due Friday already, so it's almost Sunday where Unit 2 is going to be live. This will be live by then anyway, so don't worry about it, but we'll get there. Anywho, exist like what I said, it exists in really large quantities. It can be a pain in the butt to sift through like mounds and mounds of data. Because of these challenges, investigators must follow strict forensic procedures. So, today's digital evidence plays a role in solving financial crimes, cyber attacks, insider threats, homicide investigations, fraud, and identity theft. Identity theft is pretty more common now, guys. Personally, I have not been affected by it. Well, maybe once someone cloned a credit card I had and charged a hotel stay on it, or they called me and like, "Are you there?" I'm like, "No, I'm at home." But that was the closest I've been to identity theft. I've known people affected by it. Maybe I told you the story of my older neighbor who was dealing with the Home Depot data breach, and that's where it just ballooned. I think I mentioned it prior. If not, let me know. I'll talk to you about it later, and we can have a whole class discussion if you want me on that. So, many cases that once relied on physical evidence now rely heavily on digital artifacts. Mostly all of them, really. Like most of them, good amount of them do. Well, I think about homicide ones just more because sadly they're common and documented as far as everything else. But they're more like, I guess, heard about. Ring cameras have captured intruders breaking into a home. They've captured a person leaving after they murdered somebody, and they have a timestamp, but that becomes evidence. So Again, I'm not naming cases or people, just think about it. It's all there. Your phone records, right? How many times have you tell it to record, it'll record. You've all seen it when they have interactions with police officers and then they get recorded through your cell phones. So, okay. Still in the mindset and with more digital evidence. A digital investigator must always ask what digital evidence might exist, right? Where could it be stored? How should it be preserved? How does the evidence support the investigation? There's a bunch of mosquitoes flying in my face. This analytical thinking is what separates digital investigators from ordinary IT professionals or people, whatever you want to call yourselves. I like the term people. Yeah, we're good. Sorry. The slides look a little different. And I got to delete that one with the period. I'll do it later. And what slide is that? 19. Almost halfway through, guys. We're getting there. A digital forensic investigation methodology is a structured process. So this is the investigation methodology part, just without the digital forensics tacked in the overview. But this is what it is. It's a structured process investigators follow to collect, analyze, and present digital evidence. This process ensures that evidence remains reliable and unchanged. Investigators follow legal procedures. Findings can be presented in court or internal investigations. Digital forensics focuses on identifying, collecting, and analyzing electronic data to determine what happened, how it happened, and who was responsible. Period? I'm just kidding. Don't just ignore it. I'll delete it. So remember, without a structured methodology, digital evidence may be challenged or dismissed in court. So here's the life cycle of a digital investigation. Most digital investigations follow a structured life cycle consisting of several stages. Common stages include identifying, preservation. So you preserve, what are you going to preserve? Collecting all the information, right? Analyzing the information, documenting and reporting it, and presenting it. Following these steps helps investigators maintain evidence integrity and investigative consistency. The first phase involves identifying, right? And if you hear my dog barking, I apologize. He's loud. Two sources of evidence. The investigators must determine what devices may contain evidence, where those devices are located, what type of data may exist on those devices. So let's just look at your cell phone. Think about that for a minute. What kind of information might exist there about you? You go to places, you use Google Maps a lot or Apple Maps. What about pictures you take? Do they geotag you and put the location it was taken in? Yeah, probably. Mine does. So it's just things like that. So keep that in mind. Possible evidence sources include, like I said, computers, servers, smartphones, USB storage devices, network logs, cloud storage systems. This stage helps investigators define the scope of the investigation. So how big of a net do you want to cast? That's why I always refer to as scope, just so it makes some more sense. So stage 2, preservation. Once evidence sources are identified, investigators must preserve the data. Preservation ensures that evidence is not modified or destroyed. The original data remains intact. The integrity of the investigation is maintained. Common preservation techniques include creating forensic disk images. Remember? In the images, we copy the whole thing bit for bit, byte for byte, create an image or an ISO file of it. Using write blockers, so you don't overwrite the data and change the access dates or anything. It'll be the same as the moment you viewed it and the moment you captured it. Securing storage devices, not just physically, also digitally. Keep that in mind. Preservation is critical because digital evidence can be easily altered or deleted. Best example for altered or deleted digital evidence, look at those fake AI videos. How many people believe them? Especially during election season. I'm not picking any party or anybody. Just think about that for a minute. A lot of people fall for that kind of stuff. So, third phase, collection. The collection phase involves acquiring digital evidence in a controlled and documented manner. Typical activities include imaging hard drives, as in you form an image from it, not you image it as in you deploy Windows on top of it. Collecting log files, capturing RAM, gathering network traffic data. Investigators must carefully document who collected the device, when it was collected, how it was acquired. If you ever hear me say tag it and bag it, that's what I refer to as those three things right there. It's just something in my head I've learned from many moons ago. It's just tag it and bag it. So tag it is in write down who collected it, when it was collected it, bag it as you put it in a bag and how was it acquired? Found it in XYZ room at a location, blah, 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 123 Maple Street. Tag it, bag it. Tag it means you write the tag, all right? The information. Bag it means you seal it, put it away, and then it's acquired. So when I say tag it and bag it, that's what I refer to, guys. It's just something I just got into the mindset of doing ages ago. This documentation supports the chain of custody, which next step is analysis. During the analysis stage, investigators examine collected evidence to uncover relevant information. Investigators will look for deleted files, user activity logs, file timestamps, malware artifacts, network activity, even keyloggers can be considered malware, and they technically are. Forensic tools help analyze large data sets and reconstruct events and timelines related to the investigation. Phase 5. Documentation and reporting. Investigators must document everything they do during an investigation. Reports typically include investigation objects, evidence collected, analysis performed, findings and conclusions. Accurate documentation ensures that investigations are transparent, repeatable, and legally defensible. 6th stage, presentation. The final stage involves presenting. Did I say 7 stages? It should be 6. I'll change it if I didn't. The final stage involves presenting investigation findings. Investigators may present results to law enforcement agencies, corporate leadership, legal teams, and courts of law. The goal is to clearly explain what evidence was found, what actions occurred. So how'd you go about doing it? How'd you go about acquiring it? And on top of that, like, how does it all tie together? How the evidence supports the investigation? How is it tying together? So let's move on here to number 27. Digital forensics and incident response. That's a little just caveat. So in the cyber security environment, digital forensics is often combined with incident response. Or, the moment ransomware hits, this team will go into place. They'll investigate cyber attacks, identify attackers, determine the extent of damage, and improve future security defenses. Sorry. So we're gonna get the chain of custody, guys. Let me go grab some water. I'll be back in a second. All right, guys, let's dive into the chain of custody. Here's what we're going to cover for this part of it. What is the chain of custody? Well, here's the definition. Chain of custody refers to the documented processes that tracks how evidence is collected, handled, transferred, and stored throughout an investigation. It creates a chronological record. In other words, a timed record of a moment of opening. So you open at 7 in the morning, work on it to 9 a.m., and then between those 2-hour window, you write down literally step by step what you did at what time, like a timestamp. Where the evidence was collected, who handled the evidence, when it was transferred, how it was stored and analyzed. This documentation helps ensure that the evidence presented during an investigation remains authentic and trustworthy. Also, another way to look at it, guys, it's like a paper trail, of evidence from crime scene to courtroom. So let's move on. So we know what it is defined-wise. And this is why it's important. This is one of the big things. Maintaining a proper chain of custody is critical because digital evidence can be easily altered or manipulated, remember? A proper chain of custody helps protect evidence integrity, prevent tampering or contamination, maintain transparency during investigations, ensure evidence can be used in court. If the chain of custody is broken or incomplete, the evidence may be challenged or ruled inadmissible in legal proceedings. I meant to paste that out, but it's fine. Even strong evidence can be thrown out of court if investigators cannot prove it was handled properly. That's the truth. I should just go to the talking point further. It's the honest to God truth about it. So the typical chain of custody log records several important details. Common information includes unique evidence identifier. They all have a unique ID. Description of the evidence. So what is it? Date and time evidence was collected. So let's say Sunday, October 4th, 2028, hypothetical. Location where it was collected. 123 Maple Street. Name of the person who collected. Steve. Just Steve. Steve. Anyone who handled or transferred the evidence. Bob. Transfer it to the truck or whatever. This information, sorry, I'm just making up names distractingly. This information provides traceability and accountability throughout the investigation process. Because let's say Steve mishandled it and something broke or that damaged the hard drive. Can't use it. Or his data got corrupted. Bob put it in the wrong container or whatever. Again, it will cause issues, essentially. Chain of custody typically begins the moment evidence is discovered and continues until the investigation is complete. This is the process. It's 4 steps usually. Evidence collected. Evidence is identified, labeled, and documented at the scene. So let's say a computer, home PC, boom, labeled, right? Documented. Located at blah, 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 123 Maple Street on October 28th, 2028. Just hypothetical. Investigators analyze copies of the digital evidence using forensic tools. That's what we're going to do next week in Unit 3. You're going to have a lot of stuff to have fun with. You're going to get your hands dirty. That's just how I like to work. I want to load you up on all the info, then we go to it. Okay. Evidence analysis. Digital artifacts are interpreted to determine what occurred. So they would scan the PC, make images with the hard drives, load it onto virtual machines like how I do in some other classes, and go from there. Evidence reporting. Investigators document findings or present results. So, best practices of maintaining chain of custody. Digital forensic investigators follow several best practices to maintain the chain of custody. Common practices include never working on original evidence. That's why you make an image of it, right? Creating forensic copies for analysis, hence making an image. Taking photographs or screenshots of evidence. Yes, you can do that. You can literally use snip tool in Windows and copy it. Properly labeling and securing devices. Logging every transfer or access event. Like the moment you take it out of that storage locker or whatever, you write your name, you're logging it out. You do not leave it blank or else you get in trouble. Because it's like, who took it? Where is it? What are they doing? It can tarnish an investigation or ruin it. Following these procedures helps ensure that evidence remains reliable and legally defensible. Example scenario. Investigator sees suspect's laptop. Chain of custody logs might include the following. Officer who collected the laptop, date and time of seizure, and place. Evidence ID number will be unique. Storage location in the evidence locker. So it could be like, I don't know, shelf 2, row 3, bin 5. Forensic analyst who created the disk image. Bob decided to work on X amount of day. The in-time analysis began. It's logged. Every action involving the device must be documented. That's why it's bold. They're like trying to drive the point home, guys. That's all. So, if proper chain of custody procedures are not followed, several problems may occur. Here's some of the examples. Evidence contamination, evidence tampering accusations, missing or incomplete documentation, evidence ruled inadmissible in court. Courts require proof that evidence remains unchanged from the time it was collected. And I missed a D here in digital. I'll fix that. 39 or 35. Digital evidence presents additional challenges compared to physical evidence. Challenges include evidence stored across multiple devices, data stored in cloud environments, encrypted or hidden files, large volumes of digital data, which you've heard me mention already. Because digital data can be easily modified, investigators must maintain extremely detailed custody records. So, what is evidence handling? Evidence handling procedures refer to the methods investigators use to identify, collect, and preserve, analyze, and store digital evidence during an investigation. It's just a mouthful, okay, guys? Give me one single note while I make a notepad here so I know the things I have to edit. Don't worry about that. That's just from my digital files I work on. 19, and it was, I think, 34 or 5. So I got to edit after this. That's all. Just making my notes. Anyways, digital evidence must be handled carefully because it can be easily modified, deleted, or corrupted if proper procedures are not followed. Yeah, the worst thing you want to do is corrupt something because then it's just pain in the butt to recover anything from it. Ugh, it sounds horrible thinking about it. In the middle of like a highway investigation and half the data gets corrupted. It's bad news bears. Proper handling ensures that evidence remains authentic, accurate, complete, legally admissible. Legality is a big thing in this, right? Because you're working with courts a lot for this kind of stuff or in investigations. If you're working at the law enforcement level, which a lot of people do. So just, even the corporate ones too, they will work a certain way, but they still sometimes have to report to court because it could be a court-on-court issue, like a civil case or a claim or whatnot. So they have to provide stuff like that, and it still has to be admissible in court. It still applies. Improper handling of evidence can lead to serious consequences. Potential risks include evidence contamination, loss of important data, questions about evidence authenticity. Yeah, evidence being ruled inadmissible in court. I know. Is that twice? No, it's good. Right? Yeah. Sorry, guys. I just thought the slide repeated from 35, almost. Digital evidence must remain in its original state whenever possible so investigators can prove it has not been altered. Investigators follow several core principles in handling digital evidence. These include preserving evidence integrity, avoid modifying original data, document every action taken. You're going to hear that a lot. Maintain chain of custody and use valid forensic tools. So, like FTK, autopsy, things like that, you will be using. That's the valid tool. Even the RAM capture one we do is a valid tool that we use. These procedures ensure that digital evidence remains trustworthy and defensible during legal proceedings. Identifying. Did this repeat? Oh, no. It repeats because it's part of chain of custody. Sorry. So we know the first step is identification. The investigators must determine what device may contain evidence, where those devices are located, and what types of data may exist. I'm sorry, guys, if it repeats, but it's part of the whole thing. It's can't really change it. Potential sources I've mentioned before: computers, laptops, smartphones, tablets, external storage devices, USB drives, portable hard drives, things like that. Network servers, cloud storage accounts as well. Evidence preservation protects digital evidence from modification. Common preservation techniques include securing devices at the scene, preventing unauthorized access, maintaining chain of custody documentation, isolating devices from the network. That's a big one because that'll change. Like if you plug in a desktop, let's say you grab from 123 Maple Street to the network, it's going to change the last time it was. It's going to essentially say the last time you accessed the network was the day of you're using it or working on it, and that's going to it can throw everything off from what you're trying to prove or establish the timeline. Just keep that in mind. Preservation ensures that investigators can demonstrate that evidence was not altered during the investigation process. That's why you wouldn't want to plug it into the network, hence the isolation part. But I talk more about that when we get into the whole makeup of what a digital forensic lab is. I will touch on forensic labs here a bit, like I'll mention a couple of them and how they work. And I think that's about it. 15 more slides, guys. 15 more slides, guys. We're almost done. So, once evidence is identified and preserved, investigators must collect the data in a forensically sound manner. Fancy speak for saying follow the guidelines and follow the steps, do it right. Typical collection methods include creating forensic disk images. You've heard me say that. Capturing volatile data. Why is it volatile? The moment you turn off the computer, it dumps all the RAM. So everything in the RAM is gone. Anything that was left open, any history of what it was or where it was or what it was searched, gone, technically, to an extent. Unless it was searched through a browser. But let's say in Windows you searched, I don't know, cooking casseroles. And that was like the last thing you needed for whatever thing you were doing. And something happened and you turned off the computer and now you lost your spot. Notice I didn't mention murders. Just think about that. Collecting log files will have a log of something, but not casseroles. I guarantee you that much. Securing removable storage devices, flash drives, portable hard drives. Forensic imaging creates an exact duplicate, you've heard me mention this before, of making an ISO of a storage device for analysis when preserving the original evidence. Documentation is one of the most important parts of evidence handling. Investigators, so this is documenting, right? Investigators must record what device was collected, where it was found, date and time of collection, tools used during collection, who handled the evidence. Detailed documentation helps demonstrate that the investigators followed proper forensic procedures. So storing, sorry, I thought the O was an A. Storing digital evidence. After collecting digital evidence, it must, there's an it missing there. That is slide 43. I did all this like a night ago, so I'm sorry, guys. It must be stored securely. Best practices include secure evidence storage facilities, so limited access. Only you and like whoever else works on it. Controlled access to evidence, logs and all that stuff. Maintaining custody records, that's the logs. Controlled access is more of who has the badge to go in and the keys. Should the janitor be allowed in the evidence logger? No, they're cleaning products to destroy data at the wazoo. We don't want that. Backing up forensic images. You'll have to have backups. Secure storage protects evidence from damage, loss, or tampering. So, digital evidence presents unique challenges. Examples include large volumes of data. Remember, it's a lot of information to sift through. Encrypted devices, you have to learn how to break encryptions. Cloud-based storage systems, they're spread all over the goddamn world. It's hard to get stuff sometimes from ISPs, and you got to have a warrant. Distributed data across multiple locations. It's all spread out like breadcrumbs, right? It's all sprinkled out. Investigators must be trained to properly identify, collect, and preserve digital artifacts across many different platforms. Yeah, it's true. Even in digital forensics, turning on a device incorrectly can alter evidence. Yeah, because you'll change the logs of when it was last time used, or turned on, or cycled. That can damage or destroy stuff too. What is a digital forensics laboratory? We're getting into it. A digital forensic laboratory, by definition, is a specialized environment where investigators examine digital devices, and evidence, and analyze electronic evidence. See, I was kind of right. Related to criminal or cybersecurity investigations. These laboratories are designed to examine digital devices such as computers and smartphones, extract and analyze electronic data, maintain secure evidence handling procedures. That's a weird one. Sorry, my brain was just trying to make sense of it. Produce forensic reports that can be used in court. Digital forensic labs play a critical role in the modern criminal and cyber investigations. So, purpose of digital forensic laboratories, whatever you want to call it. Digital forensic labs support investigations by recovering digital evidence from devices. Well, duh, right? Analyzing digital artifacts and activity logs, reconstructing timelines of events, identifying individuals involved in cyber incidents. These labs help investigators determine what happened, when it happened, how it happened, who may be responsible. Also, another one should be why it happened. What was the root cause of this? Think digital forensic labs as a crime lab for computers and digital evidence. So here's an example of one. DC3, Cyber Forensic Laboratory, CFL, operated by the Department of Defense Cybercrime Center. It's a freaking mouthful, I know. See, DDC3, three Cs, performs advanced digital forensic analysis for government investigations. Key capacities, interchangeable, include digital and multimedia forensic examinations, data extraction from damaged devices, malware and intrusion analysis, providing expert testimonial in legal proceedings. The laboratory operates under strict quality standards to ensure that the results are reliable, reputable, and scientifically valid. So here's another one. Regional Computer Forensic Laboratories, or RCFL. Program supports federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. So there's a Southern California one. I think there's like two of them. One's LA based, and one I believe is Riverside based for the FBI, but three if I count San Diego. Three with San Diego. Digital Evidence Examination Centers, training facilities for investigators, collaborative environments for multiple agencies. So think of like ATF, again, FBI, what's another one, DEA, even Border and Security would be there too to an extent because they have to sift through data too digitally. These labs analyze evidence from devices such as computers, mobile phones, cameras, storage devices. RCFL labs help support investigations involving terrorism, cybercrime, and other criminal cases. Some organization research labs. That's what we're into. Some organizations operate digital forensic labs focused on research and analysis rather than criminal prosecution. Digital Forensic Research Lab, or DFR Lab. These labs study online disinformation campaigns, cyber operations, and influencing campaigns. So the best way I can kind of talk about influence campaigns is just talking about politics in general. I'm not picking at anybody, okay? I'm not even picking a side because I don't really have one. Think about it, during election season, how many ads do you see related to politics about either side or either candidate? Some may be real, some may be generated, some may be false, some may be throwing mud one way or the other, but sometimes they get a little too outlandish, and that's where influencing campaigns come in. Is it ran locally through somebody that part of their organization, or is it a foreign actor? Things like that. So just that's the best way I can describe that. Social media manipulation, that's pretty common nowadays, right? With fake AI videos, I reference it because that's kind of where it's going, or people impersonating other people online. There's a bunch of that sort running around. Digital information ecosystems, it's a whole tangled web we weave, right? Their work helps governments and organizations understand emerging digital threats and online activity patterns. So what's the equipment in here? Digital forensic labs typically contain specialized hardware and software such as high-performance forensic workstations. They are air-gapped. What do I mean by that? They're not hooked up to a network within the building. They're on their own separate bench. Within their lab, they have, so essentially you would have two PCs. You would have your main PC that you work on, use internet and whatever, log reports and stuff like that. Then you have a separate computer that would not be on the network. It'll be off the network, loaded with all the tools, so you can just analyze and it cannot be essentially compromised. That's how it usually works. I will get more into that when I talk about labs themselves, like as its own section. They have write blockers to protect original evidence, forensic imaging tools, network analysis tools, secure evidence storage systems, lockers, logging, digital logs, things like that, and biometric scanners. These tools allow investigators to analyze large amounts of data while protecting the integrity of the original investigation. So, roles in the Digital Forensic Laboratory. Digital Forensic Laboratories are staffed by specialists with different roles. Common roles include digital forensic analyst, incident response specialist, so the person that goes out and kind of collects most of the data, malware analyst, evidence technicians. Oh, sorry, those are the ones that collect the data. Cyber investigators, which sounds fun. Each role contributes to the collection, analysis, and reporting of digital evidence. They all have their own role to play and part to play. That's all, essentially. So Digital forensic laboratories face several challenges, including increasing amounts of digital evidence. Remember, the mountain's just getting higher, guys. The amount of data people deal with and produce. Encrypted devices and storage systems, cloud-based data stores, rapidly evolving technology. Because of these challenges, forensic labs must continually update tools, training, and investigation techniques. So, digital forensic laboratories help ensure that investigations are scientifically sound, legally defensible, and technically accurate. Without these labs, investigators would struggle to process the massive amounts of data, digital evidence, or digital data generated in modern investigations. All right, guys, we're at the recap. So during this unit, we explore the foundations of digital investigations and the mindset required to properly analyze digital evidence. Key topics covered include the investigator mindset and critical thinking in digital investigations, types and sources of digital evidence, the digital forensic investigation methodology, the importance of chain of custody, evidence handling procedures used to preserve digital data, the role of digital forensic laboratories in modern investigations. Understanding these concepts helps investigators ensure that digital evidence is accurate, reliable, and legally admissible. So, well, what's after Unit 2? Look ahead. Now you have an understanding how investigators approach digital evidence, right? The next step is learning how to analyze that evidence using forensic tools. The next unit, we're going to use the following things: autopsy, FTK, and some Wireshark to capture the net packets. These tools will allow us to examine forensic images, analyze system artifacts, investigate digital activity on computers and networks. It will move us from investigator theory to hands-on digital forensic analysis. So that's all I have for you for lecture, guys. I will see you in the labs on the already pre-recorded. See you there. Take it easy. Have a good one.